Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to join in expressing my appreciation to you for this historic hearing. What a wonderfully appropriate way to begin your tenure, Mr. Chairman, with the Equality Act. We've heard a lot of misinformed criticism of the Equality Act from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. One of the oft-repeated criticisms is that it is misnamed. Actually, no name could be more appropriate for this measure than the Equality Act, and no measure better deserves this name, the Equality Act. The truth is pretty straightforward. The Equality Act would very simply protect the LGBTQ plus Americans in all 50 states from discrimination. It would ensure that everyone is free to go about their daily lives, to go to the store, to shop online, to take a bus ride, find a home, to get health care without the fear of harassment or discrimination. This issue should not be partisan. It is truly an American cause. In 1991, Connecticut became one of the first states to pass a law protecting persons from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Connecticut expanded this protection to prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity or expression in 2011. I am deeply proud to be from a state that respects equality and honors that respect with action. Danielle and Jennifer Hounshaw were both born and raised in Connecticut, and later they fell in love and they married. They started a family in Connecticut. When they moved to Bristol, Tennessee, to be closer to extended family, Daniel, Jennifer, and their daughters became vulnerable to discrimination in public places like restaurants, shops, and doctor's offices. After 18 months in Tennessee, where they experienced varying levels of repugnant discrimination at work, in daily life, and elsewhere, they decided to move. Danielle and Jennifer support the Equality Act because, in their words, quote, "No one should have to worry about whether they will experience discrimination when choosing a new home or deciding where to relocate a family." In many ways, we've made progress in the fight against discrimination against LGBT Americans. Connecticut is now one of 22 states to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. But under current law, many Americans don't enjoy those same protections. 28 states do not have such a law on the books protecting LGBTQ Americans from discrimination. The lack of nationwide protection scandalously leaves Americans like Danielle and Jennifer uncertain about their rights, in limbo, depending on where they choose to live or when they travel, including people from Connecticut who travel to other states and are subject to discrimination. We are one nation, and the people of Connecticut deserve that protection wherever they go, traveling, moving, and enjoying the privileges of our Constitution and rights. The Equality Act would codify and strengthen the progress that we've made already in states like Connecticut and the courts. And a lot of the arguments made against it are based either on misinformation or deliberate distortion. I'm proud to support this act. And I'd like to ask Mr. David briefly, can you describe the ways in which the patchwork of state laws impacts the experience of LGBTQ Americans?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question, Senator. The patchwork of laws that exist in this country makes it very difficult for LGBTQ people to thrive. If I obtain a job in one part of the state but have to move to another part of the country, I may lose some protections. And there's some states that have ordinances that protect LGBTQ people, but in other parts of that state, they don't have those protections. It's simply not fair. And it goes to the point that I was making earlier, the contention that providing these protections to LGBTQ people in some way will result in the sky falling, will compromise women's rights, is not true. Because if it was true, we would have seen it already. We would have seen it in the states that have had, just like Connecticut, the states that have had non-discrimination laws in the books for decades. I mentioned Illinois, I mentioned other states that have had these on the books for years, and we have not seen that reality. But the reality that we are seeing is that 2/3 of LGBTQ people face discrimination. The reality we are seeing is that 44 transgender women have been killed in this country. That's the reality that we're trying to address. And we know that we can address those concerns with the Equality Act. We're only trying to make sure that we're being treated equally under law. And all of the claims about, and I know, Senator, you were not asking this question specifically, but I think it's worth highlighting this concern about sports. The Equality Act does not force anyone to do anything other than not to discriminate. The legislation doesn't create some new reality. It simply allows transgender students to not be discriminated against in sports. And one final point, 20 states, the NCAA, and even international Olympic committees already allow transgender athletes to participate and have for years.
Thanks for your eloquent testimony today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Lee.